Hi, Pirates. We are working on Chapter 3.3, Properties of Addition and Multiplication. Today's lesson, you will learn I can use properties of operations to generate equivalent expressions. The success criteria for today's lesson is use the commutative and associative properties to write equivalent expressions, know the addition property of 0, and know the multiplication properties of 0 and 1. Let's get started. Some key ideas for today's lesson. In words, the commutative property. Changing the order of addends or factors does not change the sum or product. Let's look at what this means in numbers. 5 plus 8 is equal to 8 plus 5. Or for the product, 5 times 8 equals 8 times 5. When you are adding or multiplying, it doesn't matter what order you put the numbers in, the result is the same. With the associative property, in words, changing the grouping of addends or factors does not change the sum or the product. Let's look at what that means. Parentheses 7 plus 4 plus 2 equals 7 plus 4, parenthesis 4 plus 2. Or parentheses 7 times 4 in parenthesis times 2 is equal to 7 times parenthesis 4 times 2 in parenthesis. As you can see, it doesn't matter where I group the numbers together in parentheses, I'm still just adding up all the numbers or just multiplying all the numbers together. So you can group any two numbers together in parentheses and you will get the same result as long as you are doing all addition or all multiplication. Those are the commutative property and the associative properties of addition and multiplication. Let's try using those properties. Using the properties, write equivalent expressions and simplify the expressions below. In examples A, B, and C, think about which property you would use. In example A, 7 plus parenthesis 12 plus x, would you use the associative property or the commutative property or both? If you said the associative property of addition, you are correct. We would move the parentheses and group 7 plus 12 instead of grouping 12 plus x, because we can add 7 and 12 together and have 19 plus x, and that is a simpler expression. In example B, how will we simplify the expression? Will we use the associative property of addition, the cumulative property of addition, or will we use both? If you said both, you are correct. Which one did you use first? If you said the cumulative property, you are correct. First, we used the commutative property of addition and moved the 6 plus 1 closer to the 8 plus 4. Then we use the associative property of addition and changed the parentheses, then added 6 and 1/10 plus 8 and 4/10 and ended up with x plus 14 and 5/10. In C, how will we simplify the expression 5 parenthesis 11y? That's right. We will use the associative property of multiplication and move the parentheses around the 5 and 11, and we will end up with 55 times y. Next, we will look at the key idea of the addition property of 0 and the multiplication properties of 0 and 1. In the addition property of 0, it tells us the sum of any number and 0 is that number. For example, 7 plus 0 is equal to 7. In multiplication properties of 0 and 1 tells us the product of any number and 0 is 0. For example, 9 times 0 is equal to 0. And the multiplication property of 1 tells us the product of any number and 1 is that number. For example, 4 times 1 is equal to 4. Let's use those properties to write equivalent expressions. Simplify the expression 9 times 0 times p. What properties do we use? That's right. We use the associative property of multiplication and the multiplication property of 0. Simplify the expression 4 and 5/10 times r times 1. We use the associative property of multiplication and the multiplication property of 1, and we end up with 4 and 5/10 times r. Here are some notes you may find helpful. I will give you a moment to write them in your math journal. Now, let's check and make sure that you have learned the success criteria. Do you know how to use the commutative and associative property to write an equivalent expression? Do you know the addition property of 0, the multiplication property of 0 and 1? Make sure you have these things in your notes. You will need them as you complete your lesson for 3.3 in your Big Ideas assignment. You're ready to complete your assignment. Good luck!